Hello, my name is Kai, and I'm a bit of a rambler. I like to travel, learn, and tell stories. I've been playing a ton of Subnautica, which is a fantastic game. The visuals I added on a mod so that everything looks brighter and more flashy. More detailed, actually. Oh my god, I have to come clean. I just deleted this entire episode. Oh my god, it's like an hour long. And it had all this interesting stuff in it. And now it's going to be 20 minutes or something because I don't think I can talk about all this again. And my throat's already... Oh my gosh. I clicked the wrong button and I didn't save it. That is the first time I've ever done that. That's crazy. So I'm re-recording the highlights after a very long session. I can't believe I just did that. That's absolutely insane that I did that. And I just deleted it accidentally. Okay, back on the horse. Subnautica. Super fun game. I played for 20 minutes the first time and thought it was very boring. Didn't go back to it again. Oh my gosh, I talked about Subnautica for like 20 minutes. Whatever, let's talk about it again. We're gonna talk about it again. The thing that's great about Subnautica is that it's very calming. You're underwater, and I like to swim. I don't like using the vehicles or anything, and I just swim from place to place, enjoying what I'm doing. I see that animals, and I've had genuine moments of maybe not terror, but I'm scared playing the game sometimes because day turns to night. I'm at the bottom 200 meters down in this alien ocean. Bioluminescent flora and fauna moving all around me. And it's very cool swimming through all of that stuff, but obviously it can be a little freaky if you're at the bottom of an ocean and I'm playing it at 3 a.m. Yeah, the design and the scale of the world is a little intimidating all by itself. Like, so many things in this alien world are so large, and you're just one guy who crashed on a planet trying to survive. But the first time I played it, I made an air pump and a couple pipes, and I was like, what the heck even is this? And I got bored and stopped playing it. So now I've played it again several years later, and the first time I played it for 50 minutes. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. There's definitely something here. And then the second day I played it for 4 hours in the morning and then 5 hours at night. And then the third day I had played it for 20 hours by the time I was done. And I'm still doing that. And I love the colors. I love the plot itself, which I didn't know existed. For 35 hours, I was just swimming through the world. Oh, I'm so happy with this podcast, and now I have to do it again. I want you to feel my pain at being a freaking idiot. So I played Subnautica for 40 hours, 35 hours or something, before I realized that I wasn't using any of I was just exploring all this stuff, but I hadn't used the scanner function, which allows you to find the resources you need to construct new materials and new vehicles and new habitats. And I didn't even start using that until, 40 hours after I started playing the game. I had just been exploring and building things just by looking with my eyes. But the scanner room is an obvious, very important fundamental function of the game, where you can locate the resources you need to further the game. So I'm actually surprised I got as far as I did in the game without using any of these basic functions of the game at all. So now I think I'm progressing a little bit quicker now that I'm playing the game as it was intended to be played, instead of just swimming around, exploring and building stuff. Because I already found a few of the things that were supposed to be part of the main storyline. But now that I finally picked up that thread, I'm progressing through, I think, some pretty big benchmarks. Touchstones? Goalposts? Those are the wrong words. Milestones in the game pretty quickly. But I don't really care about the story as much as I care about the world they have created. I do like building stuff, and I like being in this ocean and floating around and finding the new stuff and creating habitats. I don't think you're supposed to build as many as I have, but I've built like 20 of them already in different parts of the world. It's a completely underwater world. In case that was in the first podcast that I deleted and I haven't mentioned that yet. So I'm just building all of these underwater habitats all across the underwater world so I can swim from one to the other and distribute resources and keep breathing and explore cave systems. But it's a very fun way to explore and just feels very calm as I swim. Because it takes a couple minutes. Like if it's 1,000 meters away, it'll take a couple minutes to swim there at the fastest speed, at least by like hand without a vehicle. But that's a good minute of not quite meditation, but just a calming swim through a beautiful ocean that might have a shark that's going to eat you. I mean, that definitely has sharks. If you see them, they'll eat you. Subnautica, big recommend. I met these Irish people at the bar I go to buy my seltzers. You can buy them in cans and just take them to go. So I usually get that with my dinners. And I bought a couple cans of the seltzers. One mango rojo and mango verde. I get the red and green mangoes, one of each. And there's a guy at the bar and he was like looking at me. And I was the only one that wasn't dressed in a suit because it's a super touristy like bar. So everyone all the tourists get dressed up and go there. And I was just wearing my shorts and t-shirt. Had my floppy touristy hat. And he said like, "What are you up to?" Or like something Irish. And I answered him and he then asked if I was Irish. And I realized I must have been copying his accent because when I hear an accent I like, I tend to respond to them with the same elocution and phonemes that they use. So I turned that off. And he asked me what I was doing and how I traveled. And I explained about the hammock camping. Then he asked another question and another. And he just kept asking questions about what it was like to date while I was traveling. And he said he was here with his friend Claire, but she should definitely meet me because they both wanted to get out of their capitalist lives. And I had clearly done that. But she didn't seem super interested in getting out of her capitalist life when she came and joined us. So I think maybe he wanted to leave. Let's give them nicknames, Deborah and Georgie. I think Georgie was more dissatisfied with how his office life had turned out, but he didn't want to admit that because then you have to like self-examine what you really want to do, which seems like a big task, I think, for a lot of people. But he was very curious about how I was living. And he kept saying, "Well, this is just fate because Deborah keeps asking me about how she can get out of." And I think he was just vicariously curious about how someone could live half off the grid, but still be in the city whenever they wanted to, how much money it took, what jobs I did beforehand, how I invested, all that basic stuff. But he kept asking me question after question, absorbing all of these answers like a sponge. So Deborah wandered off to another table and then sat down with them, and we wandered over after a bit. The bar was closing down. We had been talking for so long. And Deborah was sitting with two guys, one normal person and one who was dressed like an extremely fashionable Jedi. And my only regret from that night was that I kept mentioning how he looked like an extremely fashionable Jedi, because Georgie had asked me why I was in the city at all, if I liked hammock camping so much, and I explained that I loved the multicultural aspect of big cities, and I like to see fashionable people again, and just remember, like, civilization is there if you want to come out of the forest. And I was like this fashionable Jedi. And I think the first time I remember the guy saying thank you, but like I must have said it like 5 more times. And I'm sure anybody gets tired of a compliment after a certain number of time. It just sounds weird, even if it's completely genuine, because he did dress very well. And I was dressed like my usual hobo shorts and a t-shirt self. But the Jedi decided to go to a nightclub. And so he took Georgie and Deborah along with him and invited me. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I haven't been to a nightclub in forever. Why not go? And so I went with the three of them, and I of course, had to check my ratty hand-sewn pink backpack because it was filled with 8 beers to go from that bar we had just left. But they let me in because I was with 1 extremely fashionable and 2 fairly fashionable people, at least city slickers, city folk. And they were like, all right, the hobo can come in. But once we were inside, it was clear, like, we could also come in because there was, like, 13 people in the entire club. And it was nice enough, and a few people were dancing, but it wasn't hopping. Georgie started doing this. Georgie was sloshed, by the way. He couldn't stand up straight. He was falling. He was slurring. Every police test you fail, that's where Georgie was by this point in the night. I wasn't far behind by any means, but we each got a beer, and Deborah and the Jedi went off to the bathroom, and Georgie started doing that thing where you stick out your hand, and then when the other person shakes it, you throw your hand back, do a high five, and then pull your hand away at the last second. And I think he thought he was genuinely tricking me, because every time he did it, he got this gleeful, like so excited face on him. And he just kept doing it one after the other, high five, low five, handshake, like all the different things you could do, and then pull your hand away. And he said, I can't believe it. I can't believe you keep falling for it. And so I think it was genuine faith that I was trying to high five, and I just didn't understand the joke. But I've taught hundreds of students, and they do goofy things all the time, or they'll tell you a joke that's not funny because they're 4. So when something like this happens, whether you're a child or a full-grown man, adults are just tall children. So this was just as funny to me as if I was watching a finger-painting kid smear blue all over his face or something. So Deborah comes back, and the Jedi comes back, and Georgie is like, you won't believe it, Deborah. You can shake his hand. He thinks he won't get it. You just pull it away, and he won't. You can just pull your hand away every time. He doesn't understand the joke. And Deborah walked around the table and gave me a solid, for real high five, and like shot Georgie a look that was pretty satisfying. And then the 3 of them decided to go to karaoke, but it was on the other side of the city, and I didn't want to get back at 4 a.m. because it was already well past midnight. And I think, yeah, it was just wise to let those 3 sojourn into the inky midnight, the concrete jungle. And all 3 of them seemed genuinely interested in having me accompany them. It would be fun and all that, but I was like, thank you, I'm good, have a great night, nice meeting you all. I'm pretty sure I said fashionable Jedi again at that point. And then I walked home, which was around the block, like a 10-minute walk or something. And I was very satisfied with my decision. I was very happy I didn't take an Uber for 20 minutes across the city to go to a karaoke at 4 a.m. or whatever the heck it was. And I woke up and I was like, look at that. You survived, you didn't lose anything, and you met a bunch of interesting people. So now you don't have to talk to anybody for a week and you just keep playing Subnautica. Speaking of Subnautica, one of the other stories that I deleted because I'm an idiot is that of Fable. I started playing Fable again because when I was a kid, I bought Fable when it came out on my original Xbox, which I set up next to the TV in my room. And I went outside to get a sandwich after playing Fable for a couple of hours, and when I went back in, the entire TV was black. And I was like, oh, shoot, I must have turned it off and forgot to save. And I couldn't see the Xbox, but I sat down on my bed in front of my TV, so then I could see it, and I could see the flames shooting out the side of the Xbox. Like large gusts of orange fire were shooting out my Xbox against my wood paneling wall of the house, my house that I lived in as a high schooler. And I was shocked into silence and inaction for a couple seconds. And then I was like, well, that's going to burn down the house. And I stood up and pulled out all of the cables from the Xbox and picked it up from the side that was not on fire, but it was still on fire while I picked it up and carried it. And I carried it through the house. Luckily, nobody was in the rooms I had to walk through, in the dining room or the living room. And I walked out, and there was a bucket of old rainwater outside, and I just placed the Xbox down into the rainwater. And my dad came out and was like, "What are you doing?" And I pointed at the Xbox and I said, "It just caught fire. It was on fire." And I think he went inside to check if like the wall was on fire to the house, but it must have overheated, shut off, and then started the fire right when I walked back in the room, because it wasn't a little bit of smoke and some heat. It was, like I said, gusts, like huge plumes of orange flame shooting out the side continuously. There was no breath in between the flames. It was just like a flamethrower shooting out the side of it the whole time I was carrying it out until I dropped it in the bowl of water, the cauldron outside. So it was super dangerous and definitely could have burned down our house. And 2 weeks later, Microsoft sent out a press release, a recall, and they said, "Hey, look, turns out sometimes these Xboxes, they start blowing up. They start shooting fire out the sides of them. If you have one of those, send it in. We'll replace it with one of the ones that don't burn down houses." And I thought, that's a very nice gesture. Probably a very nice way to, minimize legal liability for what must have been a pretty big problem if they had to issue a national recall of their product. Houses must have burnt down. And I was like, well, perfect. I put it right in the back of my closet while I figured out what to do with this. I didn't even know a recall was a thing, I was a kid. So I went in and looked through my closet for it. Couldn't find it. I went and asked my mom, and she was like, "Oh, I threw it away." And so that's my mom threw away my story, because I didn't collect baseball cards or anything. I did manage to get the Fable disc out of the Xbox Drive that day. So I had that with me by the time I got the next Xbox, maybe the Xbox One, I think it was called, or the 360. I can't remember what it was called. Whatever the next iteration of the Xbox was, that I got what felt like years later, but to a kid, time means nothing, and time means nothing to me anyway. So it might have been much short. Maybe it was only a year. But I did get the new Xbox later, and I tried to play it, but I couldn't because there was this big smudge that I assume was a flame warp, and the disc didn't play on the new Xbox. So I never got to play Fable until last week. Before Subnautica, I played Fable for 4 hours, and the beginning was kind of different than what I remember. The activities were different than I remember doing, and it was pretty boring. It was basically just grinding the exact same enemies in the exact same very tiny levels, and then you get more powerful, and then they get more powerful, but they look the same. They show up in the same place, they're identical, and I guess eventually you'll get strong enough that you can just kill everything. But I was pretty bored after 4 hours, especially with Morrowind being my favorite game. All open world, all exploration. Subnautica, also huge exploration, building things. So just fighting the exact same 13 enemies, grinding away to get a higher level, was not fulfilling my video game chakra. And I moved on to Subnautica. Happy I did. It was the coolest. It's so much fun. Having a great time playing that. What were the other 20 minutes? Because I delete my notes after I make a podcast, so I had just deleted my notes when I realized this saved podcast was not saved. I know part of it was Sushi Miyagi, which you all should go to if you're in Panama City. There are a surprising number of 5-star sushi dishes I've had here. Not every restaurant has every single dish is 5-star, but Miyagi has had some stuff that is absolutely top notch. And even I don't like cooked sushi rolls ever. I've never liked them, although I've tried them before. I accidentally ordered one here because I did not know apanado meant fried. So any rollo apanado is a fried sushi roll, which I would never order. But Yerson, the guy who owns Sushi Miyagi, gave me this fried roll, and he said he was surprised because I always got raw fish. And I was like, yeah, I did not translate that well. But this cooked roll was perfect. It was crazy. It was wrapped in a lightly battered nori wrapped around the rice around the roll and fried without any oil, still very crunchy, very lightly battered, very flavorful, and just like the perfect texture, perfect crunch, not thick at all, still very thin, so it didn't mess up the rest of the roll. It was a very impressive fry, to be honest. So I got the gyoza also, but he fried those differently. They were more steamed than fried, and I like fried gyoza. But what is crazy about this is that I don't like fried sushi rolls, and the one this guy made was so good that I couldn't not like it. It was still like one of the best sushi rolls I've had in forever. Everything I get at that restaurant is so freaking good, especially the tuna ceviche. Have I mentioned the ceviches I got at that place? The shrimp ceviche is out of this world. And what's interesting, it's the first place I've been served shrimp cut into 3 pieces, which is how I cut my shrimp when I cook it, because you get more sauce on each piece. And then, I think I did talk about this. Sorry if I did. My brain is berating me pretty hard. I also got tuna ceviche, and it was the best. It was the best tuna I've had in any dish in years. It was fantastic. So, I go to dinner pretty early usually, in the early afternoon. I avoid the rush. It's quieter, and then I'm sitting in AC, and so when the sun goes down, I can walk around more comfortably. So I'll eat my dinner pretty early. But because I'm usually one of the few people in a small restaurant like this Sushi Miyagi too, it gives Yerson and me the time to talk while he's preparing other stuff for the dinner rush. And he told me all about his plans. He asked me about my stuff first, how I could travel and what I did for money. And I told him about the investments in English teaching and all that kind of stuff. And then he explained that he was trying to build up his social media following, and he wanted to do a bunch of creative things with his business. And it's really cool because it's obvious he and his wife are both very creative. Yerson creates very original sushi recipes that I would not imagine I liked, but they have all tasted fantastic so far, like really good. He let me try a new dessert item he's working on, which is fried plantain with ice cream, which reminds me of this fried ice cream I got in high school a lot with this club in JROTC. But what's really nice about the dishes at Sushi Miyagi is you get the exact right amount of the dish too. So this plantain and ice cream dish is just 5 thick slices of plantain artfully arranged around a small scoop of ice cream. And I think that was it. It's very simple. He definitely understands the Japanese aesthetic and like the way they cook in Japan. And he and his wife are planning to go to Japan so he can study there and just be in Japan for a while. Oh, and Paula's very creative too. She does all the decorations for the restaurant, and they're very simple decorations, but they look perfect. Like there's one Asian umbrella on each of the columns, and that's it. They don't go overboard and have like 5 umbrellas all around the restaurant. Or on the refrigerator they have in the back, there are sushi magnets that Paula arranged in a very simple, asymmetrical, pleasing pattern. So I was really impressed by how the shop looked, and then how Yerson made the sushi itself. It's like, got the whole package, this Sushi Miyagi place. I recommend it. So I got to try that dessert, and Yerson looked up at me after I had the first bite, and he was like, it's on the new menu, right? And I was like, yeah, man, it's on the new, it's on the menu. Oh, while we were talking, he was telling me that his sister-in-law had just come into town, Paula's sister. And he put down his knife, put his hand on his hip, and stared at me and said, but her boyfriend, he is a liar. And I was kind of taken aback because I think that was like the harshest thing I had heard him say up to that point. And I was like, a liar? What does he lie about? And your son just stared at me and he said, I don't know. And he went back to cutting whatever he was cutting. And I was just like, wow, that must be pretty bad. Like, a liar. What happened? And I was wondering, but I didn't want to pry. And also, it's a little tricky talking to him because he's always cutting something. It's a sushi restaurant, so he's preparing the cucumber or the crab or the tuna or whatever. So I don't want to talk to him and have him like cut his hand because I'm distracting him with a question. So I didn't follow up. I was just like, oh, I wonder how bad this liar sister-in-law boyfriend is. And right after that, maybe 15 minutes later, Paula and her sister came in. And your son was like, oh, this is Laura. Her boyfriend is the lawyer I told you about. And I was like, lawyer. Yes, I remember that. Hello, nice to meet you. Yeah. And I was like, oh, lawyer. He definitely said liar, like just had the wrong phoneme. And I was laughing to myself internally for like 5 minutes straight because I thought that's such a great misunderstanding how I didn't understand. I thought he was so angry, but I think he was just proud that his wife's sister was dating such a high esteemed occupation businessman. And I get that a lot because I travel, I'm traveling constantly. So very often someone will mispronounce English, but I mispronounce things constantly. So I don't usually like to bring it up because it doesn't matter. It'll just make the other person feel embarrassed for not saying something correctly. And usually their English is better than whatever I can speak of their language. So far be it from me to, cast a stone in a glass house. Probably not one-to-one, that analogy, but it's okay. And a couple customers had just come in, so I didn't bring it up. But I think next time I get him alone, I'll explain that I thought he said liar, because that's so funny that I think it's okay about the mispronunciation. He won't feel too embarrassed. Yeah, we traded a lot of stories that day when he was telling me about his plans for the business and expanding their social media profile and how he really wanted to start a podcast and talk to other chefs and just keep learning. And I found out he was a few years older than me, which shocked me because he looks like 10 years younger. Oh, and I did talk, speaking of looking younger. Okay, I'll probably close out with this because I cannot remember anything else I talked about on the last podcast. But speaking of looking younger, when I was talking to the Irish guy in the bar, Georgie, he said, it's surprising too that you camp so much because your skin face looks really smooth, looks good. And that was surprising because not a compliment I get much, having that ruddy alcohol complexion. But I have personally noticed my skin looking smoother these days, and I have started a new, extremely minimal skincare routine as of a few months ago now, I think. I stopped using soap on my face. I was taking a shower one day, and I realized that the rest of my skin on my body, where skin is, the rest of my body all felt pretty smooth. Like, it still felt like smooth skin, except my face, which isn't a rocky landscape, but it just doesn't feel smooth as the rest of my body. And I realized that after I put soap on my hands, my face was usually the first thing I washed, and I always washed it with soap, even though I didn't wash maybe the sides of my belly every time or something like that. And the sides of my belly are smooth as a plastic chair. I was curious if I could come up with anything, but I'm too tired and I've already done this, so I cannot come up with any good analogy for a smooth thing. What the first thing I thought of was fish belly, which is like, but I think it's because I was talking about the sushi so much. Look at that. I made it to 30 minutes. That's pretty good considering I deleted all of the notes and the whole podcast. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, to be honest. And you get to hear me genuinely frustrated about something stupid I did, which, guess what will never be happening again? Don't say it, knock on wood, because it could. So anyway, he told me my skin looked very smooth, and that's interesting because the only thing that has somewhat recently changed in the last 2.5 months or something was that I have stopped using soap to wash my face specifically. I'll wash the dirty human crevices with soap still, but I keep it off any outward facing skin generally. So now that includes my face, and I personally have noticed my skin looking smoother since I started doing that. After like the second month mark rolled around, I was like, I'm pretty sure that's making a difference. Because even though I'm trying all these different Panamanian beers every day, I still look pretty okay. I don't look red and blotchy. And now this stranger has mentioned how smooth my skin looks and has asked me about it, so it must be real. Because it was very out of the blue also. We weren't talking about skincare or hygiene at all, except for the bidet. Oh, that was the other thing. Okay, wow, okay. I think I got to talk about the bottle bidet again. I'm just going to mention it real quick. The bottle bidet has completely changed how I travel. The bottle bidet is the best thing ever. You poke a hole in the neck of a plastic bottle, fill up the bottle with water, put the cap back on, and then squeeze it. You have a bidet. It works great. It's all you need. In a lot of countries, they don't have plumbing, or rather they don't trust their plumbing. So they have signs that says, don't put waste paper in the toilet, just throw it in the trash can. And that is gross, and nobody has to do that. So I'm just going to put this again. I think I went on for like a very long time on the podcast I deleted, but I'm just going to say you should use a bidet. And having the bottle bidet, I love that I can make that in literally any country in the world now. There are plastic bottles everywhere, or I can just buy one from the convenience store, poke a hole in the neck when I finish drinking Coca-Cola or whatever, and fill it up with water and squeeze a bidet. Bidet. I love having a bidet anywhere. It would straight up control where I rented a house from, and now I can just, everywhere has a bidet because I can carry it around. I can empty out the water and just carry around an empty plastic bottle with a tiny hole in the neck. That's my bidet. It's so great. I love being clean, and I love never having to touch my own waste. And folks, toilet paper is absorbent. If you think that tissue paper separating you from your waste is some kind of barrier, it isn't. I guess it is technically some kind of barrier, but it certainly does not stop bacteria from transferring to your skin. And I haven't touched that stuff in a long time, and I don't plan to ever again now that I have the bottle bidet. I'm hoping I never have to get near touching waste through a piece of tissue paper ever again. I've been using it for 3-4 months now, 5 months, something like that, and I love it. Every time I use the bottle bidet, I'm like, this is such a great improvement to my life. I don't have to search for the rare house that has a bidet in countries that usually don't. I just have one with me all the time now. Hygienic, simple. So back to my smooth skin. I explained the no soap thing to Georgie, and he was quite interested and said he would try it, but I bet he forgot to later. Did I already talk about the karaoke thing? I probably did. I'm not going to talk about it again if I did. Sorry. It's just they went to karaoke and I didn't, so I think I talked about it. I think I re-talked about it. And the only other time something like that skincare thing has happened was when I was fasting in China. By the 4th day, I was like, okay, there's no placebo effect, or you're not seeing things, like your skin looks good. My pores closed up. My eyes were like shockingly white, the whites of my eyes. There were no alcoholic engorged veins shooting through them like there is most of my life. I just looked very sparkling, clean, shiny, new. But I was making that judgment, and I was like, it seems undeniable to me, but they were all improvements on. I always had my eyes, but they just looked like they were popping. And my skin looked better than usual, but it was still my skin, so I wasn't quite sure. It just seemed like, yeah, there's definitely a difference. And then that day, when I went to class, I was talking with his dad, who speaks super good English, and we would just talk after class that he brought his son to. Like, they came twice a week, and we just talked for a couple minutes before they went after class, before they left. And in the middle of talking about something completely unrelated, this Chinese dad was like, hey, your eyes, the white, very, very white. You look younger. Your face is smooth. And I was like, holy crap, it is working. And I was like, you know what? I've been fasting for like 4 days. And we had a conversation about it. And that was the only other time that a specific strategy of mine paid off and someone brought it up apropos of nothing regarding like skin care itself. So it was really interesting to hear that again. I immediately thought of like that dad who was like, wow, you look younger. And I do feel better when I eat less. And look, I'm not eating disorders, no joke at all. I have a very healthy relationship with food, and I overindulge regularly. And I do not binge, and I do not purge. Wait, I don't purge, but I do binge, for sure. I do have parties. But I'm very comfortable with my body. I'm comfortable with the amount of food I eat. I'm not saying anybody should stop eating food. Just for me, fasting is great. I do it occasionally. I feel better. And now this no soap on my face thing feels good. My skin doesn't feel oily. It feels healthy. It feels comfortable. It just feels like normal skin. Like after I soap away all the oils on my face, it would feel clean, sort of. But it wouldn't feel normal until the oils came back into my skin. Oils are supposed to be on your skin. Your skin needs the oil to be healthy. So I do think having more oil on my skin is making my skin healthier. Which, that doesn't sound crazy, but saying I don't use soap on my face, I think that sounds crazy to a lot of people. But I had already told Georgie and Deborah 1,000 crazy things about my life, so I was like, hey, why not tell them you don't use soap on your face anymore? Well, thank you so much for listening. I'm saving this one very clearly in a separate file right now. And this will go out to you. I'm angry I had to do this twice, only at myself, never at you. But I'm really glad I went through this again and I have the episode done. I sincerely hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I am going to go take a shower, not use soap on my face, and then fall right the fuck to sleep. I was gonna play a little game or some before, but I'm really tired now. But we did it together. You and me, friend. Try that bottle bidet. And have a good night. Or day. Any part of the day. Now at this point, you're probably thinking, I thought he said he was leaving. Does he really love listening to himself that much that he's just going to keep talking even though he has nothing left to say?